Okay. I would like to call this meeting to order. Good evening, Director, Commissioners, staff, and general public. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chairperson Morales,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Medina, for the record, he is absent today. Commissioner Cuevas,
Present.
Commissioner Lomeli,
Present.
Commissioner Valdez,
Present. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, are there any corrections to the agenda?
There are no corrections to the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Next item are the public comments.
Yes, Madam Chair, I will read the public comments. At this time, the public may address the Planning Commission on any items listed on the agenda, including non-agenda items that are within the Planning Commission subject matter jurisdiction. State law prohibits the Planning Commission from acting or entertaining extended discussion on a topic not listed on the agenda for tonight's meeting. As a reminder, please show courtesy to others while providing public comments and direct all comments to the chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any staff communications?
There are no staff communications tonight.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, can we get an approval of the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting held on September 3rd, 2024?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Planning Commission meeting held on September 3rd, 2024.
I'll second.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Chairperson Morales,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson, Commissioner Cuevas,
Aye.
Commissioner Lomeli,
Aye.
Commissioner Valdez,
Aye.
All right.
The minutes are approved. Is that?
Minutes approved. Thank you. Next item is the public hearing, and if we can please read the description of tonight's meeting.
Yes, Madam Chair. We do have a presentation for this item tonight, so if we could get the presentation up. So item number 2, next slide, please. So once again, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Item 2 on tonight's agenda relates to resolution number 11-24. What this does is it recommends City Council approval of a proposed ordinance that would, in essence, amend Chapter 840 of the Montebello Municipal Code. And this relates to the registration and maintenance of vacant and abandoned commercial properties, as well as industrial and residential properties citywide. Per direction from the City Council, earlier this year, staff reviewed the Montebello Municipal Code and identified areas where existing regulations could be enhanced to address nuisances impacting the community's quality of life. In a unified approach, the CLEAN Task Force, which is an acronym, CLEAN standing for City Leading Efforts Against Noncompliance, led by the city's Code Enforcement Division, which falls under the Planning and Community Development Department, would bring together various resources, including Public Works, the Montebello Police Department, the Montebello Fire Department, as well as the City Attorney's Office. And the purpose would be to address, among other things, common urban problems such as vacant property maintenance, blight, including graffiti abatement, and illegal dumping, as well as connecting vulnerable populations with available resources. Staff believes the proposed amendment is a balanced approach aimed at a property monitoring program that would track and collaborate with property owners as well as bring in city resources to ensure that vacant properties are maintained and well kept, and there is a level of engagement to promote activation, whether it be permanent or temporary. So at this time, I will hand it off to our planning manager, Viviana, who will provide some additional information.
So since the establishment or the adoption of ordinance 2329, fast forward to present date, there have been some issues as it relates to, or ongoing issues as it relates to vacant properties throughout our city boundaries. So a growing challenge we have a surging in vacant and abandoned properties leading to blight and safety concerns within the community. We've received an increased level of complaints about the safety and aesthetics and the overall community well-being. And this has led to an urgency action, highlighting the need to protect neighborhoods and to improve the quality of life. So the main items that we're addressing are just the overall blight conditions. After staff analyzed the ordinance, we found that blight conditions, that there are the vacant properties, and it has been proven that the neighborhood decline and they overall lower the surrounding property values. We also have safety hazards. Unsecured properties attract illegal activities like break-ins, squatting, and things of the like. Neighborhood disruption, poorly maintained properties negatively impact the community's appearance and quality of life. And we found that the current ordinance as it's written has ineffective regulations. So the current municipal code provides outdated information or unclear, and is very difficult for staff to enforce the property maintenance of a property. So due to these ongoing issues, the City Council directed staff to analyze the current ordinance and identify areas where existing regulations could be enhanced. And after reviewing the ordinance, staff found that there are amendments that would further strengthen the existing maintenance, security, and enforcement requirements, which would help ensure that properties do not become a public nuisance. So the amendments that we are proposing tonight are outlined in Attachment A within your agenda packets. And I'm going to move forward here to the table. And we have key ordinance proposed text amendments. So the first you see here, there is a discussion as it relates to vacant properties that must be registered, but there are no specific guidelines for the registration and maintenance. Our proposal here is to add language that would require the property owner to register their vacant property within 90 days of the property becoming vacant, which will allow the property owner ample time to reactivate their site or register their vacant property. The second item here that we have limited maintenance requirements. The current ordinance has limited maintenance requirements that do not specifically detail the security measures. We were proposing to introduce comprehensive maintenance and security requirements, including mandatory fencing, weekly inspections, and security patrols for properties vacant over 180 days. The third item here is there are no specific penalties identified within the current ordinance for specific to monitoring programs. So what we're proposing here is to implement a monitoring program with fees, along with penalties for non-compliance, and mandates regular reporting and updates for property owners. Once property has been confirmed to be a vacant and abandoned property, there will be a monitoring program fee established that will require property owners to pay on a monthly basis. And this varies from commercial and residential properties. Now, the fourth item we have before you is the fourth text amendment that we're proposing is specific to exemptions. The exemptions section of the existing ordinance is very vague. The proposed language that we would impose would clarify the exemptions for specific types of properties, such as multifamily residential dwelling and multifamily residential and ADUs. And it also clarifies the exemptions for properties with active permits, under development, or temporary vacancies, ensuring that they do not contribute to the blight. Now, the last one we do not have, there are a final proposed amendment. There's no relative language in the current ordinance, but staff is proposing to add language that will incentivize the activation of vacant commercial spaces by hosting pop-up events. So the department may issue a fee waiver of the monitoring fees if a vacant commercial space is activated via a pop-up event or qualified temporary tenants who operate on the vacant site for more than 25% of any calendar month. So in addition to these items here, these proposed amendments, staff is also proposing technical changes to the ordinance that include revising the title of Chapter 8.40, adding new definitions, added new sections and requirements consistent with the proposed amendments, and other minor grammatical revisions. So I will now hand it back over to our Director Palambi so that he can further discuss some of the vacant properties throughout the city boundaries.
Thank you, Viviana. Thank you. Again, Commissioner, so this slide here is, we really wanted to highlight a recent property that was, it's located at 2302 Whittier Boulevard. And this is where the city's team, executed an abatement warrant to address blight, trespassing, graffiti. Really, this property in particular, it's a drain on the corridor, and it really is creating a lot of problems and challenges. So we recently, within the last month, worked with our city attorney's office to obtain an abatement warrant, which is no easy task. It takes time. And through our code enforcement division, we were able to document all of our efforts in communicating with the property owner and the lack of compliance. And going back to, I think, what Viviana mentioned in her presentation, this particular amendment does not include penalties because those mechanisms already exist in our current code, which is what code enforcement uses when they go out and they issue notice of violations, which in sometimes result in a citation. So that exists today. What we are doing is we're instituting or implementing a monitoring program really to prevent these types of issues from festering, where property owners would be required to provide security services, and we would have resources available to monitor and make sure. I think currently we are tracking 32 vacant properties within the city. This would mandate property owners to register those properties. We could create, for example, a cluster map that would show us where these properties are located. We could work through our economic development division to work with the property owners and those pop-ups maybe, or entrepreneurs that want to find a brick and mortar maybe on a temporary basis to try it out to see if they like it. I believe the 25% requirement would require the property owner to activate the site a little over 2 weekends if they did Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So really, I think it's 6 or 7 days if you look at 25% of the month, which isn't a lot, right? The goal here is not to, come in and be heavy-handed. The goal is to really balance this to where those property owners that want to activate their properties and are working with the city, they don't have to worry about this. But those property owners that aren't, for example, this car wash, then that's where these monitoring programs would really be effective. So I just wanted to make that very clear. And it should also be noted that the abatement did require, in this particular case, coordination between the various departments that I previously mentioned. The MCAP team actually was able to help 3 individuals that were living at this property. And as you can imagine, the living conditions were deplorable. The Montebello Police Department assisted with bringing, there were 5 individuals that were living here. 3 accepted assistance because, they're not required to do that. The other 2 just decided they were gonna, relocate, and they did it on their own independently at their choice. And then the Public Works Department went in and helped clean up the graffiti and really helped board up the location. But as you can imagine, these things do reoccur. So that's where we need collaboration from property owners. And that's really what we're asking for as part of this amendment. So that concludes our presentation, and we're available to answer any questions that if anybody in the public wishes to speak. Madam Chair, this would be the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there any questions for staff?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to commend staff for, taking such a proactive, response to a need of the city. And I know that in the city where I work, we've had a lot of problems with abandoned buildings where, it creates an unsafe condition, but it also hazardous. And unfortunately, some of the unhoused create havoc by trying to keep warm, I understand, but, in doing so, they set these buildings on fire, and it doesn't only damage that building that's abandoned, they damage the neighboring buildings, and it displaces families, in the process. So it creates more, a greater impact and, again, for the lack of keeping these people out and maintaining these buildings. So thank you for, doing this.
I have comments and then a question. So I'll start with my comments. So I'm definitely happy that something is finally being done about this, specifically in the area that you highlighted, the car wash on Whittier. There's a very high concentration of empty storefronts and abandoned buildings. I've even seen code enforcement put a sign on one of the buildings on the corner that said unsafe. So I'm glad that something is, being done. I mean, this is something that should have been done a long time ago. My question is I like the program. I've seen similar programs like this in larger cities that cost millions of dollars, yet those individual districts in those cities have residents of about 260,000, whereas Montebello were like 60,000, right? But those programs do cost millions of dollars, and I wanted to know where the funding for the Clean Task Force would come from, because I don't think the fees alone is going to cover that.
Commissioner Valdez, that's a great question. So what the program would do is, whenever there's an abatement, for example, I will use the car wash. Any resources that are spent and any for material, it is well documented, and that's where our team and our staff come in. And then what we do is we work through our city attorney's office to place a lien on the property. So ultimately, the city will be reimbursed and made whole. It may take time, but for example, once effectively we place a lien on a property, that property cannot be sold, refinanced. In essence, they can't do anything with regard to any kind of banking transactions until those liens are paid off. So that is our goal, to make sure that we are not a burden on the general fund. And this would be obviously on a case-by-case basis, and it would apply to any property where we have to go in and use these resources. So that's what we're doing as part of this effort as well.
May I, Chair? Okay, that sounds great. What I would like to also mention to staff is maybe you can report back to the commission with available state and federal funding. There are programs that they label under environmental equity. I know that our certain Congress members for certain areas, they advocate heavily for these fundings that will do things like clean up illegal dumping and abandoned lots. So I would, love to see what type of environmental equity programs Montebello qualifies for.
For me, Madam Chair? Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. Our staff is continuously looking at opportunities for grant funding, and we're always looking to take advantage of grant money where it's available. So we could definitely report back within, the first 90 days of this being, once, if it is in fact approved and becomes effective, we could do that within 90 days.
Thank you.
And I would like to add, just that, yes, as Commissioner Cuevas has said, commend the staff because this is a great opportunity, and it shows the protection of the residents and for our city, for our different districts as well. So, all right, at this moment, I would like to open the public hearing. If anyone in the audience, in the public, would like to share any comments, or if there's any speaker cards. All right. All right, I'll bring it back to the commissioners. Any final comments?
I do have a quick question. Sure. Is this not the car wash that we recently approved to cut their property in half, sell the one across from the alley, and they're going to rebuild it like with 2 stories and more modern?
Yes, please.
It is in fact the car wash. There was a planning, I don't recall the exact date, but I believe it was a site plan review or possibly a conditional use permit on this property, where they received approval to demolish this existing facility and build a new self-serve car wash. From what we understand, there was some disconnect between the ownership and the operator. So it did go through the building department's plan check division, and then it just stalled. And as you can see, there hasn't been any activity in several months. So this is where we are.
May I? Okay, so this is actually an example where the property owner isn't so absentee, kind of like some of the other buildings who have been completely abandoned for years, right? So this is like a pretty good example, a pretty successful example.
I would say that this property is a prime example of why we need this task force. They not only control this property here, but there's also a vacant lot, I believe, almost directly across the street where the old French Cafe site was. They own that property as well. The city worked with the property owner at that time to get them through the building plan check process. This was approximately 3 or 4 years ago. They had an issued building permit to construct, I believe it was a 67-unit residential development, and they never fulfilled their obligation under that entitlement either. So in addition, there's a third property that this property owner owns on the south east corner of Bluff and Whittier that is a constant code enforcement problem where we have unpermitted vendors that set up there in the evening hours. So this property owner is on code enforcement's radar, if I may add. Thanks.
Can we also get a copy when you guys report back with the environmental equity programs of some of the properties that you're intending to target with the Clean Task Force?
Yeah, we can absolutely, we can give you the copy of all 32 properties that are listed. Yeah, that's public information. Yep. And just to be very clear, and maybe we missed this, but in our current code, there is a registration requirement for vacant, I believe it's vacant lots, it's really vague, which is what we're doing is we're really clearing. I think council pointed out some deficiencies in the way that the current code is written. So we're really trying to amend it to clear up that, to where we are requiring all properties that are vacant, not just vacant lots. But the way it works in today's code is the owner is required to come in and pay a fee, which is by resolution of the city council, and it's $120 annually. And they have to, I believe, pay the fee before January 1st. I think they have from January 1st of each calendar year through January 31st. And then what the Code Enforcement Division does is they register that property. But other than us being aware of it, if the property is, we really don't have a mechanism to monitor that activity. So this is where we're going with this.
Thank you, Director.
All right. Then I would like to close this public hearing. And can we get a motion to approve with the conditions or the request that our commissioner has requested?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve text code amendment TCA case number PC-2024-0013-TCA with recommendations 1 and 2, plus Commissioner Valdez's request with the city.
I'll second that.
Can we get a roll call, please?
In addition to the, as part of the recommendations in the staff report, there is also approving the CEQA exemption applicable to the code amendment.
Okay. Okay, so read out the recommendations. Okay.
I would just summarize it. You can just add the CEQA exemption or item 1 and 2.
Okay, I'll add the CEQA exemptions 1 and 2.
Do I have to second it again?
No, roll call.
Can we get a roll-
Chairperson Morales,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuevas,
Aye.
Commissioner Lomeli,
Aye.
Commissioner Valdez.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next item on the agenda is a presentation.
Due to a scheduling conflict, the city attorney's office would like to request that this presentation be postponed to the next meeting.
I motion second. And can we get a roll call for?
Chairperson Morales,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuevas.
You would have to motion and then somebody could second.
Oh, okay. I'll
move to-
motion to,
Okay. I'll second that.
okay.
Chairperson Morales,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuevas,
Aye.
Commissioner Lomeli,
Aye.
Commissioner Valdez.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And are there any Planning Commission orals?
I just wanted to vouch Director Palumbi and all of city staff for all of their hard work that they've given. In my past few years here in the Planning Commission, I can say that I've seen a great deal of change, positive change, and I just wanted to vouch everybody for that.
In that motion.
I second.
I beat you.
You did.
Aye.
If I may, and you know, Commissioner, thank you so much. And it means a lot from the commission. You know, we really consider ourselves a family here in the planning department, and we work very hard. We have a great team. I think now we're up to 23. Jill just joined this last week, so we have a lot to do. But you know, looking in the rearview mirror, we've done quite a bit. So we're very proud, and thank you for your leadership here on the planning commission. So it's always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And I would like